Thank you so much for clicking the thumbnail and being interested in my work. In this video I share with you my techniques and tips on how I achieve winter skin tone. Be sure to watch it right through till the end, because here and there I'll be slowing things down in real time so you can take a closer look. So let's dive in and take a look. Just a quick explanation how I do the grid method. I've had quite a few people ask me to do this, an easier way to do the outline, so I'm just going to explain to you how to do the grid method using this program, which is Adobe Photoshop Elements 2023, and all I'm doing here is just enlarging it so I can see the measurements at the top. It's scaled up at 12 inch by 12 inch, and I'm going to make a grid starting from the center every 2 inch, and all I'll do is drag out these guidelines and then place them into the correct place on the horizontal lines and the vertical lines. It's an easy way to do it. It's a great program, but if you haven't got this, just print out your image and just draw it with a ruler really every 2 inch, but start from the center. Just going to quickly go through how to do the grid method. Just using this 708 Pastel pencil, which is great for this colour pastel matte board, and then basically just using imaginary angles from the corners of each square, and once you've got the position then you can use the other elements. But it's a great way to learn how to do freehand. I mean, you can start off with like 1 inch grid, then 2 inch grid, then 3 inch, and then you can just have 4 quarters, and then eventually just a center point. That's where I'll work from on my freehand. For extra accuracy, you could actually use the cross reference, because one of these is 2 inch, so you could work out what the depth is and the width and just measure it with the ruler, so you can combine the two. Showing a couple of examples of my freehand and other methods of doing the outline. I'll leave a link in the description as well, so please check that out after you've seen the video. Now keep the marks very light and try and keep as loose as I can, and don't get too sort of wrapped up in the grid, because it can be a crutch if you're not careful. So just try and do as much freehand as you can as well, by just sort of flowing with it. But eventually you won't need the grid eventually, but it's handy when you're doing things like this, especially when you're doing wool, because within that square there's so many strands, so you can count how many there is, find the pattern of it, and it makes it a lot easier when you've got a grid actually in this case. But it's just keeping it loose again, not putting too much detail down at this stage, just getting the basic sort of outline in there, and then it'll all be adjusted when I do the underdrawing. But it's basically getting that feel, the movement and the sort of pattern right, and working out what is creating that pattern as well, because on the rib here it goes smaller, so all I'm doing is just trying to keep that sort of momentum going with it, and just flow with it, and then create a similar thing. It's not going to have to be exactly the same, it's just your interpretation of it, so just keep loose and relax. There's a selection of pencils I'll be using for the underdrawing, mostly Carbothelos and Conti Paris. Just ghosting the image with the Faber-Castell, and then firstly going over now with the white, so it's less pressure where it's mid-tone, more pressure where it's highlight, then very lightly glazing over then with the warm red and lemon yellow, and a little bit of white here and there, just so you're sort of building it up. The reason I do an underdrawing is to correct the outline, so you're putting that little bit of form in there. So I'm not interested in getting the details right, the chroma or the value. All it is just getting the placement where things are. Now using dark green and red for the shadows there, just adding a bit of snow in there just to help me to recreate the atmosphere, because even at this stage I'm connecting to the energy, making sure everything feels right and the flow's there. If this is the first time you've seen one of my videos, I do mention a lot how I connect to the energy by opening the heart, send this feeling openness to the reference image, and you'll find that there's more energy comes back, and then it flows through you out of your hands into your work. So I'm mapping out all the sort of marks very lightly and then just glaze over. So basically that's what I'm doing all over, just using the white to mark it up and then just glaze over then with the red, yellow or blue or green. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? It's absolutely free, and then you're sure not to miss any of my future videos. Now I'm using the green first here rather than brown because it's easier for me to make that into a skin tone and rechange the shape of that if I need to. Now just doing it very lightly, very light pressure. I don't want to put too much pigment on the tooth of the pastel mat because you need to keep that tooth there for when I start piling on the rich colours. So it's really important to keep everything really nice and light. For the shadow areas I'm using yellow ochre, and then for the lighter areas I'm using lemon yellow. Lemon yellow is more sort of vibrant and fresh, where the yellow ochre is more sort of subdued and subtler. So it's just a case of working out what's needed. Adding this light pigment down first will make it so much easier when we start putting the rich colours on, because it acts as a vehicle and they flow more then. Right, now for the rich colour stage, these are the Caran d'Ache pencils I'll be using, and the same colours I used previously. Now for the rich colour stage, I'm laying in the Caran d'Ache pencils. I'm using the Chinese white and the flesh tint 5%, and I'll be using the 10%, which is this one here in places. So you just got to feel how warm it is and how vibrant, and then you change it accordingly. Now for the shadow area here, I'm using dark green and a red. It's either going to be a cold red or a warm red, so you try to see which works the best. And this area here is quite vibrant and fresh, so I'm using this vermilion from Caran d'Ache and then adding that sort of 10% flesh tint with it to try that. Eventually I add a bit of lemon yellow with that later on when I start putting the details in, just to give it that real kick. But for the moment I'm just getting as close as I can with it. Now here I'm using a cold red, and that's a similar colour with just added a little bit of white with a little bit of yellow in it. It cuts down on sort of mixing the colours, so I'm using a pink here which is very similar to what I'm looking at. So if you've got a colour which is similar, you could use that, then just change it up a little bit, and that's what I'm doing here. Just laying in that lighter colour, then glaze again, then lighter colour, glaze again, until you get the desired effect. So I'm using, instead of white, I'm using this sort of flesh colour tint, and then just glaze again over the top. Now I'm using a tint of a warm red, so it's a tint of the vermilion. So I've got a tint of the cold red and a tint of the warm red, so I'm using that for the lips here as well as the warm red. So I'm combining the two and using cold red and green for the shadows, and basically just getting a feel for it, just changing these different colours, just sensing the temperature, because one side's warm, one side's cold. But if you haven't got these pre-mixed pencils, just use the basic reds and then just add white and a bit of yellow to it, and you've got this similar colour. But it's just a quickness, and I can create different textures by using these pre-mixed ones. So that's why I've done it for this portrait. At this point of the portrait, I was experimenting to see whether I could put these like snowflakes or blown snow in at this time, rather than doing all the lips and then just putting them afterwards. So I was just playing to see what works, but I decided to leave them after I've done all the skin tone rather than doing it over the skin. So I decided to get all that coloured in and then put them snowflakes or blown snow afterwards. I've done all the skin tone. I'll just play, you know, sometimes you just got to work things out and have a go really. Just keep loose and just enjoy it really, and just see what works. It's all about playing it, having fun and trying different things. And but I'm using green here, look, and red, because that's a natural sort of shadow colour. Because if you want to desaturate a colour, you use the complementary. So for the red there, I've used green. Just like to take this opportunity to thank all my patrons for their wonderful support every month. Can't thank you enough, I really appreciate it. If you're considering joining me on Patreon and would like the benefit of longer, slower and more in-depth videos, please check the link in the description below. This portrait will be on my Patreon at some point where you'll see everything all in real time, be about 3 or 4 parts, so you'll get to know moment by moment what my process is and my feelings as I go step by step. And it's only a small amount each month and you get the access to everything in my library, so please check out Patreon. The link is in the description below if you want to know more details. Now I'm just building it up layer by layer, and every layer it creates another layer of texture, and it's lighter to start with and eventually it gets darker and darker with the glazes, but that light I put underneath shines through and that's what creates the glow, and that's the reason why it's lighter to start with. This skin tone is quite fascinating to do because there's cool and warm colours all mixed together. It's amazing really to actually create. So I'm using yellow ochre in some areas, lemon yellow in others. So to actually get the shadow here, I'm using the light pink colour with the blue to create a purple, and then desaturate that purple with the yellow ochre or lemon yellow in some places. So I'm actually using the primary colours, if you like, to actually blend all these skin tones together, and it's quite fascinating just using blue, red and yellow just to subtle everything up. So putting the blue in there just to change it into purples, but then you need to warm it up, so I'm putting lemon yellow in there, so it's creating actually like a greeny purple. So you're just changing it up slightly to the colour it's needed, and it just needs a little bit more blue or a bit more yellow or a bit more red. So it's a case of just keep playing and adjusting very slightly. As you can see there, the point is not very sharp on my pencils because I use the edge of it, so I just keep turning it to find a new edge. And here I'm just adjusting the actual eyelashes, just getting everything in the right place but a bit more richer colour. It's all preparation for the details. Now I'm trying to get that glow on the top of the eyebrows there, and it's just, you're just playing really, just putting that pigment down ready for the details. And here is the detail stage. So what this is all about is getting that finesse right and that sort of subtlety. So what I do is slow things down and create smaller and smaller circles and more finer details, and then just glaze over the top. So you're using the white to create that subtlety but finer details, finer movements, and then keep glazing and changing up like I mentioned earlier. So it's very subtle, using these primary colours just to change it up here and there, and it's a bit of this or a bit of that, and it's a case of being patient and feeling the temperature really, because some's cold, some's warm. It's fascinating to do. We'll be starting with the snowflakes soon on this, but I'm just putting the dark shadows in. See, there's not much contrast between dark and light on this portrait because it's all sort of reflected light, and it's fascinating because you're trying to create that 3D look by using different temperatures and again being aware of that rather than strong highlights and strong shadows to give you that form. If you're enjoying this video, why not give it a like and share it with your friends? It would mean so much to me, as this would help the channel to grow. Just adding a little bit of darkness now in the eyelashes here, just a little bit here and there makes all the difference. Just using the edge of the pencil there. Now adding burnt sienna now, because that's what's going to be in the hair. It's like a golden colour, so burnt sienna and lemon yellow make a gold. So I've added that little bit of burnt sienna in there, and I will add a little bit of lemon yellow later on. Putting a little bit of black, not too much black, just an odd little mark here and there, just to create that darker feel to it. And it's a case of just getting a balance now of the whole thing. So what I'm doing is opening up, getting a feel, and really connecting to the energy of the person and trying to feel how it's all a oneness, because you don't need to be separate, you see, because you can put a lot of details in the eyelashes and not in the nose and the mouth, and it can look a bit imbalanced, so it has to all look one. So you're just going around feeling your way, and if it feels wrong, it's an indication that it needs work. So that's what I'll go by. I don't look at it and think, well, what does that look like? Can I change that? Does that need working? I'm not thinking about it, I'm just feeling it. So if it feels wrong, I'll work on it until it feels right. If you want to know more about how I create shadows in skin tone, I have got a free class and it's available, and there's a link in the description below, and it applies to everything I do, whether it's landscape, seascape, no matter what it is. It's a simple way of working out how to create shadows in colours, so you're welcome to it. The link is in the description below, so please check that out after you watch the video. These shadowy areas here, there's reflected light which is causing a freshness, so I'm using the Faber-Castell white, which is a fresh white, which will create a fresh colour when I let glaze over the top. You've probably noticed I use different whites a lot. Well, this is a Carbothello white, which is perfect for this sort of job because it's more sort of chalkier and it makes it easier to work with and to find these subtle marks. So that's what I'm doing here first before I apply colour on top. Now I'm using the Caran d'Ache Flesh Tint 10%, which is quite rich and vibrant, and that will change up some of these snowflakes into more of a sort of vibrant and zingy colour. So it's a case of using different brands to help you to achieve a certain effect. Some of these snowflakes are really fresh and white, so I'm using Faber-Castell here instead of the Carbothello. So sometimes you have to change it up before you glaze to get that right vibrancy and freshness you want. The thing to do is look in the mirror and have a look at the reflection to see what's needed to be done, and then I saw here that it needed to be more subtle in places, so I've put yellow ochre here and there just to chill out certain ones, because they are quite glowy in some places and dull in others, and I'm changing it up here. Look, some of them a little bit of green as well. There's all sorts of colours reflected on these sort of snowflakes, so you just have to keep playing and just be spontaneous. Just to finish off part one, I've just put a little bit of snow going into the actual hair there, just to give it some shape and some meaning for when you actually see this video on YouTube, to make sense of it, what's happening. Also, it looked like she's got like a rash on her face if I didn't do this, so I've just added this little bit of detail in so it makes sense of it all. Thank you for watching the video right till the end. I really appreciate it. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's been fascinating skin tone to do. Now, if there's any questions at all, please leave a comment in the section below this video and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if you've enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It would mean so much to me, as this would help the channel to grow. The next video, part 2, will be the rest of it, the hat, the clothes and the hair. So be sure to check that out when it's available. In the meantime, if you would like to see more of my work, please check out this video here. Take care. Bye for now.